It takes 10 years for a young chimp to master the art of creating a tool and using that tool to produce an edible foodstuff.
Nearly all adult alala use tools, and they can all extract a food item from a small crevice in less than 1 minute.
Tool use. It's a sign of intelligence, problem solving, and even culture. We've seen it in chimpanzees, in crows, in elephants. But now, we've seen it in orcas for the very first time. Researchers from the Center for Whale Research in Washington State just recorded wild orcas using tools in a way no one expected. This isn't just a curiosity. I could rewrite what we thought we knew about marine intelligence and how orcas pass down knowledge across generations. Why tool use is such a big deal? Let's be clear, not every animal uses tools. Most don't. Because tool use isn't just about holding something, it's about thinking with it. Tool use requires cognition, the ability to understand cause and effect. Planning, to do something now for a payoff later. Manipulation, precise control over body parts or limbs. And in many species, social learning, passing the knowledge on. It's a rare cocktail. So rare that in the entire animal kingdom, only a small group of non-human species has consistently shown tool use across individuals and generations. We've seen chimpanzees use sticks to fish termites from their mounds, octopuses wearing coconut shells like armor, sea otters floating on their backs, cracking mollusks open with rocks. Crows craft hook-shaped tools from twigs to snag grubs. Even elephants strip branches to swat flies. Each case reshaped how we thought about animal intelligence, because tool use implies not just problem solving, but imagination. The idea that an object could become something more than itself. And when it comes to ocean animals, the list gets even shorter. The ocean is a tough place for tool use. There are no hands, limited grip, and fewer solid surfaces. So for years, cetaceans, whales, dolphins, and porpoises were left off the list. Brilliant? Yes. Vocal? Definitely. Tool users? Never documented. Until now. The groundbreaking observation. The team from the Center for Whale Research had been doing what they always do, monitoring a well-known orca pod off the San Juan Islands, one of the richest hotspots for orca activity in the Pacific Northwest. But then, something weird happened. One of the orcas broke the script. Instead of chasing salmon or weaving through kelp, this orca was interacting with something odd. It looked like a jellyfish, or maybe a piece of soft marine debris. But here's the twist. The orca wasn't trying to eat it. It was playing with it. More than that, it was using it. Over multiple dives, the behavior repeated, again and again. This wasn't a fluke. The orca balanced the object on its snout like a soccer ball on a seal's nose, swam sideways, cradling it between its pectoral fins. He pushed a smaller whale toward it, as if saying, "Hey, try it," held the object steady mid-water while rubbing its belly against it. Researchers were stunned. This wasn't just idle curiosity. It looked deliberate, social, and most critically, functional. One orca using an object is cool. A pod passing it around and incorporating it into group interaction? That's something else entirely. It blurred the line between play, communication, and purpose. And for the first time in recorded history, a cetacean was caught on camera using a tool. Key takeaway number 1. This is tool use, not just play. At first glance, it's easy to dismiss. A whale rolling around with a floating blob? Looks like fun, maybe even a little goofy. But when researchers dug deeper, the pattern became impossible to ignore. This wasn't random, it wasn't chaotic, and it wasn't just mindless play. Several specific details suggest something far more complex was happening. First off, the object itself, most likely a strand of kelp or a Pacific sea nettle, wasn't just whatever floated by. It was selected. Long, flexible, textured. Perfect for contact. Not something you'd eat, but ideal for manipulating. Then came the behavior. The whales weren't tossing it or chasing it like a game of marine keep-away. They were rubbing themselves with it, holding it in place, positioning it with incredible care. Which matters, because self-directed rubbing is a form of self-care observed in other animals. Think of elephants dust bathing, or birds using ants to preen their feathers. It's purposeful and functional. Even more fascinating, it wasn't just one orca. Multiple whales engaged with the object, and they weren't improvising. They were using nearly identical techniques. The points to social learning, the kind where behaviors are passed on, watched, mimicked, and refined. In short, this wasn't just entertainment. It was intentional, repeated, taught. Which means it checks all the boxes. By scientific standards, this isn't just play. It's tool use by whales. Orcas, the ocean's smartest predators. Orcas aren't just big, sleek, and terrifyingly efficient. They're also brilliant. Among non-human animals, orcas consistently rank near the top in cognitive ability, and it shows in almost everything they do. They use group hunting tactics that rival the coordination of a military unit. They speak in local dialects, distinctive calls, and sounds unique to each pod. They live in matrilineal societies, where grandmothers often lead and teach the young. And those young? They're not left to figure things out alone. Orcas actively teach their calves how to hunt, play, and navigate the world. And that's just the basics. Some orca populations have developed hyper-specialized techniques for survival, like creating waves to knock seals off ice floes, breaching themselves on purpose to catch prey, then wriggling back to sea, slapping fish with their tails to stun them before circling in for the bite, flipping stingrays to avoid the deadly barbs underneath. Each of these behaviors is learned, shared, perfected. They're not instinctual, they're cultural. And now, with tool use entering the picture, we're not just talking about a smart predator anymore. We're looking at a species capable of cultural evolution. One that passes knowledge down, adapts to new challenges, and finds innovative ways to manipulate the world around it. The orca mind isn't just powerful, it's transformative. Is this a one-off or part of orca culture? That's the million-dollar question. Was this just a quirky moment caught on camera? Or are we seeing the first ripple of something much bigger? Because if it's the latter, if this behavior isn't random, it changes everything. So far, early signs suggest it's not a one-off. For starters, it wasn't just a single curious orca. Multiple individuals in the pod were observed engaging with the object. They weren't improvising either. They used similar techniques, showing intention and possible imitation. Even more compelling, the same behavior happened over multiple days. It wasn't a one-time novelty. It was repeated, as if part of an emerging pattern. Now researchers are going back into the archives, sifting through old footage, rewatching dives they once overlooked, looking for signs they might have missed, because sometimes you only recognize a breakthrough after you know what to look for. If this interaction spreads within the pod, if calves learn it from adults, or peers mimic each other, then it qualifies as cultural transmission. And that puts us in entirely new territory. Because tool use is impressive, but shared, taught, and sustained tool use, that's culture. And for orcas, that means their minds aren't just evolving individually, they're evolving together. Key takeaway number 2. Orcas may be more culturally complex than we realized. When we think of culture, we tend to picture art, music, language, and things humans do. But in the animal kingdom, culture has a different meaning. It's not about paintings or poetry. It's about learned behavior, skills, habits, and techniques passed from one generation to the next. Not through DNA, but through teaching, imitation, and shared experience. And that kind of culture? It's rare, but not unheard of. We've seen it in chimpanzees, who teach their young how to crack nuts using rocks, in dolphins who place sea sponges on their snouts to protect themselves while foraging, In crows who drop nuts on crosswalks so passing cars can do the hard work of cracking them open, then wait for the traffic light to grab a snack. All examples of group-specific intelligence. Knowledge are passed down like tradition. And now, orcas may officially join that list. This isn't just instinct. It's not reflex or hardwired behavior. It's something much deeper. Cultural complexity. And that matters, because culture suggests that intelligence isn't just locked inside individual minds. It lives in the group, in the pod, the family, the society. If orcas are teaching each other tool use, then we're not just looking at clever animals. We're looking at a cognitive collective, a culture in motion. And that opens a whole new chapter in how we understand their minds. What this means for marine biology. Studying marine mammals is like trying to understand a novel while only glimpsing a few pages at a time. You can't tag a whale's brain. You can't ask a dolphin what it's thinking. And you definitely can't strap a GoPro to an orca and hope for the best. Which is why behavior, especially filmed, repeatable, and interpretable behavior, is so incredibly valuable. Moments like this? They're gold. This single observation may have ripple effects throughout marine science. Already, researchers are reevaluating archived footage, looking for similar behaviors that were once dismissed or overlooked. Designing new ethological studies, now with tool use and cultural transmission as testable hypotheses. Rethinking how we interpret cetacean behavior, especially those gray areas between play, communication, and problem solving. And here's the kicker. This might just be the beginning. If this behavior spreads, or if it's discovered in other pods, then the definition of orca intelligence will need updating again. Because for decades, we've known they're smart, but we may have underestimated just how smart. Not just in terms of cognition, but in social depth, in cultural nuance, in adaptability. Tool use is a signpost, a marker on the road to more complex understanding, and it suggests we've only scratched the surface of what orca minds are capable of. Why this matters beyond science. Let's step back for a moment. Forget the data, forget the charts, forget the scientific milestones, because this isn't just about orcas using tools, it's about what that means. If orcas use tools with intention, teach each other through observation and imitation, pass down customs, techniques, tricks, and even games, and experience complex emotions, grief, joy, stress, and maybe even curiosity, then the question isn't just how smart are they, it's what kind of beings are they? And once we ask that, everything else shifts. Are we still okay calling them resources? Still fine watching them do flips in concrete tanks for fish and applause? Still underfunding the protection of their habitats while claiming to respect marine life? Because the more we understand their minds, the less comfortable our current relationship with them becomes. This isn't just about science, it's about ethics, responsibility, perspective. If orcas have culture, then they're not just surviving in the ocean. They're living there, creating, teaching, evolving, just like us. And maybe it's time we stop thinking of ourselves as the center of the story and start seeing ourselves as part of their world, too. Key takeaway number 3. This could be a behavioral tipping point. We've known for years that orcas are smart enough to coordinate hunts, to recognize themselves in mirrors, to form tight-knit families and grieve their dead. But tool use? That's something else entirely. It's a cognitive milestone, a line in the sand between instinct and innovation. Because tool use isn't just about solving a problem. It's about understanding that an object can be repurposed for a specific goal. That's not just intelligence, that's abstract thinking. And in the natural world, those moments matter. When chimpanzees first cracked open nuts with stones, it wasn't just a cute trick, it was a window into their minds. It changed how we viewed our evolutionary cousins. It changed how we viewed ourselves. Now the same thing may be happening in the ocean. This isn't just a moment in marine biology. It's a moment in animal consciousness studies, and maybe even philosophy. Because once you recognize that another species can not only think, but rethink, can experiment, adapt, and pass knowledge on, it forces a deeper question. What other kinds of minds have we overlooked? This could be the beginning of a behavioral tipping point, not just for orcas, but for how we understand intelligence itself. What's next for research? We're past the moment of discovery. Now comes the real work, figuring out what it means. And for the Center for Whale Research, that means turning a lucky observation into a full-scale investigation. Their next steps are already underway. They're developing more underwater drones, equipped with longer battery life, better maneuverability, and high-resolution cameras designed to capture hours of uninterrupted footage without disturbing the whales. They're actively mapping object interactions, how long they last, which orcas engage, and whether the behavior follows any consistent sequences. They're even testing responses to artificial objects, carefully introduced into the environment to see if orcas recognize, reject, or repurpose them. And it's not just marine biologists involved anymore. They're now collaborating with behavioral scientists, cognitive researchers, and even AI specialists who are helping model the movements and identity patterns the human eyes might miss. The big questions on the table? Do different pods across regions show different styles of tool use? Is this behavior seasonal, linked to mating, molting, or environmental changes? And the biggest one, can orcas not only use tools, but also invent new ways to use them? We've cracked open a door to a hidden part of orca life. What comes next isn't just about observing more, it's about asking better questions. Because the deeper we go, the more remarkable their minds might prove to be. Historical echoes. Are orcas the dolphins of tomorrow? Let's rewind the clock. There was a time not too long ago when dolphins were the surprise geniuses of the sea. They used sea sponges as tools. They had signature whistles, essentially names. They grieved, played, solved problems. It shocked scientists and shifted the way we viewed them, from clever fish to complex emotional beings with something resembling culture. Now history may be repeating itself, but this time the spotlight is on orcas. And they're not just matching what dolphins showed, they might be surpassing it. Unlike dolphins, orcas live in tight-knit family clans, structured, stable, and led by matriarchs. They demonstrate long-term memory, remembering routes, relationships, and calls across decades. They speak in regional dialects. They pass on traditions. And now they may be engaging in tool use, purposefully, socially, and even creatively. They're not just hunters or performers. They're thinkers, builders of social knowledge, keepers of generational wisdom. In many ways, orcas are the elephants of the sea, emotionally intelligent, socially bonded, long-lived, and complex. But now, they may be something more. Not just thinkers, not just mourners, not just strategists. Maybe the artisans of the ocean. Creators, teachers, carriers of culture, and that changes everything. What this says about intelligence everywhere. For a long time, tool use was our sacred benchmark, the line in the sand, the thing that made humans special. But that line, it's been crossed over and over. Crows bend twigs into hooks. Octopuses carry coconut shells for armor. Chimpanzees fish for termites with sticks. Elephants swat flies with stripped branches. Dolphins use sea sponges like gloves. And now, orcas. Balancing, rubbing, passing, and maybe even teaching. So maybe it's time we stop asking which animal is becoming like us and start asking what kinds of intelligence are already here. Because the more we look, the more we see that the world is not divided into smart humans and dumb animals. It's filled with diverse minds, each shaped by evolution, environment, and culture. Some walk, some fly, some swim, and some, like orcas, think in currents, in clicks and calls, in matrilines and memories. The sea is not empty. It's full of minds. Minds that solve problems, minds that feel, minds that use tools. Maybe the question was never who's becoming human, Maybe it's, are we finally ready to recognize intelligence in all its forms? One pod of orcas, one object, one set of deliberate, repeated movements. And just like that, we've glimpsed another level of their intelligence, and maybe their culture. Subscribe for more surprising stories from the frontier of animal behavior. And tell us in the comments, what do you think this tool's use means about the orca's mind? And should it change how we treat them? Stay blessed and stay curious.